Plenty more to talk about still today, focusing in many ways on Hong Kong as a financial centre, as I started saying. We'll talk about a whole range of global themes, but Hong Kong as a financial centre is something that that we think deserves a bit of renewed attention. So we're going to hear about it from the perspective of being a commercial bank here, and indeed one with one of the only ones, universal banks left with a global footprint. So we're great. We're lucky, I think, to hear from Luanne Lim, who is CEO of Hong Kong HSBC. Luanne, please come to the stage.
Get this technology to work. All right, so thank you for that very kind introduction, and it is indeed an honor to speak to you here today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I was asked to speak on the importance of Hong Kong for a leading global bank. At HSBC, we operate in 62 countries and territories. We have 39 million customers who entrust us with about $3 trillion worth of assets. And that's a long way of saying we're the world's last truly global full-service bank. And it's no accident that the beating heart of that world's last truly global bank is here in Hong Kong. Personally, I always like to think that Hong Kong will not be Hong Kong without HSBC. Now, that may or may not be true, but it's certainly true that HSBC would not be HSBC without Hong Kong. Our success, our reach, our DNA as a bank, all these are a direct result of the unique environment that is Hong Kong. There is nowhere else on earth that offers Hong Kong's combination of connectivity and openness, the rule of law, the entrepreneurial spirit, the concentration of talent, and its position at the heart of the most dynamic part of the global economy. And there are very few places that can match the depth and liquidity of our bond markets, the $33 trillion equities markets, or the ability to hedge risks in our derivatives markets as well. So no leading bank, no leading global bank can afford not to be in Hong Kong. And we're truly fortunate that this is our home market. So I will talk about what makes Hong Kong so unique in a bit more depth. But before I do, let me touch briefly on what should be top of mind for many of you and many of us here today. I suspect everyone listening today is having to navigate complex and unpredictable geopolitical currents. But that makes Hong Kong's role as the meeting place between East and West more important than it has ever been. Hong Kong is a marketplace where East and West come together to focus on the opportunities that unite them, rather than the differences that divide them. And despite the trans-Pacific tensions that we see today, there is still a lot that unites us. Last year saw a record $670 billion of bilateral trade between China and the US. So the reality is that we are codependent. Janet Yellen had said decoupling would be disastrous for both economies. And IMF says what it calls geopolitical fragmentation may cost the global economy 7% of GDP. And when I talk to customers here in Hong Kong, in ASEAN, in the Gulf and beyond, they are still thinking globally. They're still looking to trade and they're still looking to invest across borders. And that is what lies at the heart of Hong Kong, our ability to connect. But our role is changing. 4 decades ago, some of you here might remember, this was largely connecting Asian and particularly mainland manufacturers with Western consumers. But in recent years, much of our work has been connecting Western investors with opportunities to tap into Asia's extraordinary growth through our capital markets. While that role will remain vital to our future, it is evolving, driven by 3 global megatrends. The first is Asia's continuing rise as the engine of global growth. The second is Hong Kong's leadership in building financial infrastructure of the future. And the third is the threat of climate change. So Asia is the engine of global growth. If the current IMF global and regional growth forecasts are correct, emerging and developing Asia will contribute 48% of global growth this year and almost $1.5 trillion of new output. If we look back into history, the Industrial Revolution made London the leading financial center of its day. And then in the 19th and 20th century, the rise of America saw that crown pass on to New York. Today, there is only one candidate to become the financial clearinghouse for Asia's success in the 21st century, and that's Hong Kong. Asia's accumulated financial wealth now stands at $140 trillion, and China alone has now some 470 million middle-class consumers, the biggest in the world. By 2025, we think it's likely that developing Asia will hold more wealth than the US. That's a lot of money that needs to be managed somewhere. And Hong Kong is the only realistic candidate as the regional leading center for recycling Asian savings into Asian investment. Only Hong Kong has the connectivity, the deep and liquid capital markets, and the understanding of the broad regional economy to become the financial fulcrum for the next round of global growth. And Hong Kong's remit extends beyond Asia. I was in the Middle East earlier this year, and every indication is their focus is shifting eastwards. Time and again in conversations, I get told we need a conduit for two-way investments. In this respect, Hong Kong still has some work to do. Our privileged access to China and unrivaled connections to Europe and the US are extremely vital, and we need to sustain them. But that doesn't mean we should neglect opportunities elsewhere. South-South connectivity. That is becoming increasingly important as trade corridors start to shift with China's move up the value chain. And as people elsewhere in Asia join the consumer economy in the hundreds of millions, Hong Kong has an opportunity to become a hub for capital raising, for trade finance, for legal services, and so much more, not just for the mainland, but for ASEAN, for South Asia, for the Gulf and beyond. So, as we have emerged from COVID, we have not just been reconnecting, we have been making new connections. And given the strong interest from all sides, I'm confident that this will be a sustained trend. Now, in a place as fast-changing and adaptable as Hong Kong, it's inevitable in 10 years' time it will look different. But what will remain the same is Hong Kong will be the place that the world meets to do business. Another area of rapid change and innovation is financial infrastructure. So Hong Kong is again at the forefront in areas like asset tokenization, digital currency, the internationalization of the renminbi. Tokenization. It has the potential to open a new chapter in financial services, making it faster, cheaper, more accessible to more people. So it was great to see HKMA leading the way earlier this year with its tokenized green bonds, and we're proud to be an arranger of the first ever issuance by a government globally. When it comes to currencies, we remain deeply engaged in the ongoing, debate over virtual assets. And we do support the government's outreach to virtual asset service providers. But in the long term, we believe it will be central bank digital currencies or CBDCs that will trigger the real revolution. They offer the flexibility and speed of virtual assets, but with added security and diminished KYC risks. China has thought longer and harder than almost any other country that I know about how CBDCs are going to work. And that's likely to translate into a formidable first mover advantage when it does go international. Now, thanks to the hard work of Eddie and the HKMA, Hong Kong is already at the cutting edge of CBDC internationalization. At HSBC, we're proud to have been taken part in a pilot last year by the Bank for International Settlements involving the HKMA, the PBOC, the central banks of Thailand and the UAE. So I think this is an area that we really need to watch closely and will bring significant change to how our financial sectors work. And lastly, the internationalization of renminbi. It will take time. The use of renminbi in global trade finance remains low, but it has shown steady increases. In March this year, the renminbi was the most widely used currency for cross-border transactions in China for the first time ever. So for those of you who think that the world would benefit from a greater choice when it comes to settlement and reserve currencies, if you want to be in on the ground floor, you need to be in Hong Kong. Around 75% of all offshore renminbi payments are processed here. This city is the focus of the PBOC's drive to use digital renminbi to make cross-border trade more efficient. And initiatives like the recently launched dual counter in Hong Kong are opening the door for even more renminbi denominated products to be traded here. The third area of opportunity is the financing of the transition to net zero. This transition is going to require significant capital investment as well as financial innovations that can encourage sustainable development. Governments cannot do it on their own. Industries, and in particular financial service industry, we need to work with the public sector to collaborate on things like establishing practical standards, practical definitions, and encouraging green investment through de-risking. These measures are what will open the way for capital markets to play the role it needs to play in this transition. And if we are to mobilize anything approaching the investment that we require, we need to move beyond today's bespoke processes. We need to commoditize green solution, whether it's green bonds, carbon markets, to new ways of thinking about public-private partnerships. Hong Kong is emerging as a nursery of the sort of innovative solutions that we will need if we are to head off the threat of climate change. And the world needs a clearinghouse for green finance, a place where we have expertise, established norms, and where borrowers and investors can come together and to create and trade green products. Now, I think Hong Kong is taking a powerful claim to become that clearinghouse. Initiatives such as Core Climate, which is Hong Kong Exchange's marketplace to connect capital with climate-related products. That's leading the way. The launch of the Alliance for the Green Commercial Banks, which spearheads the green transition of financial systems across Asia. The government has also pioneered the sale of green financial instruments to prime the market, like the green bonds that I mentioned earlier. And we have signed up to the Common Ground Taxonomy, which will lower transaction costs and facilitate cross-border flows of green capital. We're also putting our own house in order. Hong Kong is the first Asia financial center to mandate climate-related disclosures across the financial sector by 2025. So I'm conscious of time and I'm probably standing between you and lunch. So let me wrap up. At HSBC, we are extremely proud of our past, but we are here for the future. And we believe Hong Kong has a vital role to play in the multipolar world that we are in today. This is the nexus of Asia. This is the most dynamic part of the world's most dynamic region. It's a place where people, ideas, and capital all come together to build a shared and sustainable future, a future that is based on a universal language of prosperity. So to go back to the original question about the importance of Hong Kong for a leading global bank, the short answer, I don't think you can be a leading global bank unless you're in Hong Kong. Thank you for your time.